the disqualification show here shortly. Let me get everything spread around. We'll wait for some more people to come in here. And let's get copy the link. All right. Okay. Hello, Spaceman Monster. Welcome aboard. Just getting the live chat set up here. And we'll get talking about what happened in Las Vegas here. Joey Logano in victory lane celebrating his first win of the season, joining teammate Brad Keselowski, winning last week, but that turned out to not be the biggest story of this race. Hello there, Broken Sandman 64. Welcome aboard. Wait to see if we get a few more people in there. Man, that was a close finish, but not to be for the rest of the field behind them there. Kind of interesting to see how it all shook out. And we'll get everything set up here. We'll wait a couple more minutes here while things settle out here. Here we go. Got about 5 people in here. I think that's a good start. So let's take a look at the clock here. By my count, we are about 11 minutes. About 11 minutes into the wait for disqualification results. Should be very interesting to see what happens here with the new aero package making its debut. Turned out to be Ford just kind of walking over the rest of everybody else at the end. Hey there, Anthony. Welcome aboard. Interesting scenario there with it being so clean and green. I think in all the advertising and speculation coming into the race, it's certainly not what everybody was looking at. The race was disappointing. I mean, it was the restarts were pretty good, but I mean, of course, we have Kyle Busch is not happy. Well, there you go. Hey, he's got 2 other trophies he can take back with him this weekend. An interesting to see the difference there for the amount of the difference in speed versus the closest in the competition. We certainly seem to get that on the start and the restarts from the stages, but you still get people kind of unspooled there. And I mentioned this at the back of the pack there too. I mean, I was kind of thinking maybe it would be more like a plate race or something where maybe they would latch onto the back of the draft and stay up there. But it even seemed at the back of the field, we didn't really get a lot of teams that were able to run side by side for any prolonged period of time. First caution-free Cup race in years. That's highly unusual, especially now. I mean, obviously the stage cautions, but bizarre set of circumstances. Just the one DNF with Joey Gase, the last place finisher. We'll talk a bit more about that as we wait out the results here from disqualifications or potential disqualifications. So we get the unofficial results here again with Joey Logano, your winner. Brad Keselowski was reeling him in there at the end, just ran out of time, finished second. Kyle Busch in third, Kevin Harvick fourth, and Kurt Busch driving the Star Nursery throwback. I mean, always an interesting story with this. I was looking for my pictures. I need to post those this week. Pictures of the 70 car that he drove in the Southwest Tour Series back in the late 90s. I was actually there when he won the race at the Sonoma Raceway in 1999. I got posted the video from that race, got posted by NASCAR Man earlier this week on Twitter. Interesting to see that paint scheme come back, and really exciting to see him, lead there for, it looks like 23 laps on the unofficial results. Pit strategy didn't quite shake out there, and the Fords overtook him. But a good 5th place finish, his first top 5 at the track, I believe, since his last year with Roush in 2005. So a good run for him there. So Well, I mean, any other thoughts, like really on the race itself? I may have to actually kind of rewatch parts of this here because, as it turned out, it was much more compelling at the back of the field. And I'm going to go ahead and kind of jump right into that. Let's talk about that. Joey Gase, your last place finisher unofficially for the race today in Las Vegas. I'm just getting my notes pulled up while I have this. And if for those of you that were watching the broadcast from the very beginning, there was actually a little bit of they did a parody of the movie The Hangover at the start, where they said Jeff Gordon said that they lost Darryl Waltrip at a Celine Dion concert, and all in good fun and everything. And then during the race, we almost had a very real situation like that. Uh, During the race, I was following the back of the field, of course, and looking at what was happening back there. And you had um, you had a pretty close battle there. Actually, we had it was originally going to be the 15 and the 77 at the back of the field. The 77 with Reed Sorensen making his first start of the year. He kind of lagged back there, as well as 52. And the race started, and it seemed like they were about to settle the battle among themselves. And all of a sudden, about 10 laps into the race, 66 drops off the pace. He'd fallen next to last. This is Gase's first start at any kind of cup competition since the Gatorade, the Gander Outdoors duels back in February, just a couple weeks ago. He had a pretty good battle with Brendan Gaughan during that race. Unfortunately, didn't make the cut for the 500. He and Ryan Truex were sent home. This was really the first shakedown run for the Cup car this year, and Motorsports Business Management, Carl Long's team, they increased their support from Toyota, and really been focused more on their Xfinity Series competition this year. Again, with Gase running full time in the number 35, and as a last place finisher in the Las Vegas race, we may merge those together into a single article to tie all that together. If it turns out that Gase is officially the last place finisher of the Cup race. So we'd seen this in the past with the 66 team last year. Of course, they had issues with the sealed engine rule and a lot of unfortunate engine failures that prevented them from. I believe they had to withdraw at Texas because they couldn't run they didn't have an engine to run in that event. They couldn't run a new engine, and they had the thing in Martinsville where the car caught on fire, caused a lot of damage to it. And we had a situation where the field team was really trying to figure out what was going to happen with them going forward. The number 66 team, when I talked to them at Phoenix last year, they were basically saying that they were just finishing out the season just to help out that sponsor, rewards.com, that signed with the 66 after the paint schemes that they were running late last season. And it was unfortunate because it was almost they may not have been fully prepared to run those races, but just wanted to close out the season, and now trying to get things started back up. So they fall out. I mean, Gase falls behind the wall. They tell him to go behind the wall. He doesn't even stop at his pit stall, and they start working on the car. So they were talking about maybe some issue with the piston or some issue with the ignition. They're kind of exploring over the car, and then suddenly, I believe I have this note here. I believe it was about lap 59 in the race. I started hearing discussions about somebody that they're waiting for to come to the track to actually talk to them about what was going on in the in the race there. And the guys are trying to figure out what was happening with the engine. And I believe from the Twitter conversation, it looked like this was the engine tuner. He actually was not at the track, and the team was waiting for this person to come over to the racetrack. And I guess he either got caught up in traffic or was still in the hotel or something like that, which was kind of surprising. But I mean, I know Las Vegas, there's no shortage of stuff going on day or night, of course. So they started talking about this guy that they needed to have come over and look at the car because, of course, as a lower funded team, they didn't want to risk having anything happen to the engine, and they had an issue with the engine and didn't know what it was. They have to have plug it into computer, figure out what's happening, and there's a specialist that handles all that, especially with the technology being what it is now. The first report I heard, and I put this on Twitter, was that this person was still 30 or 40 minutes away from the track. And I was thinking maybe since Toyota Racing Development has, some people that work in, like, Southern California or something, maybe this is a guy that, wasn't necessarily on the team and they were just waiting for him to come by. Maybe he was just some guy on standby if anything came up. Still didn't really make a lot of sense, but as it turned out, it seems like this was actually the engine tuner for the team, and he, for some reason, was not with the team during the race or even the early stages when this issue happened. So, we'll see what happened there. The issue, Carl Long had spoke over the radio, at least it sounded like him over the radio, was saying that, he didn't want to send the car back out there and blow up the engine because, of course, on this West Coast swing, they're way far away from all the shop on the East Coast. And they're running apparently this car and this engine at Fontana in a couple of weeks. So, clearly they don't want to go out there and just blow the engine up or anything like that, even though they wanted clearly, through other communications, they wanted to get as much attention for the sponsors on the car as possible after they didn't qualify for Daytona. So, it ended up being where there was a lot of radio traffic that was coming through about this person and saying that he was still 10 minutes away. And then 10 minutes later, they still said it was 10 minutes and they didn't know where he was. And they didn't know why he was still back at the hotel. And, they needed him to take a look at it. And then finally, the person showed up. In my notes here, it says he showed up at lap 94, and they looked over the car. And at that point, they pretty quickly diagnosed that it was a terminal issue. And after the 100 lap mark, they pulled the car out of the race, and that was the end of it there. See any other comments on here? Yeah, about the team running at Auto Club. As Sir R, I see your comment on there. That's my understanding, is that they still are going to run at Fontana, but again, we'll see what's happening with this engine. I'm sure what they're doing right now is they're just fully tearing that down and try to diagnose what's happening with it. But yes, my understanding is that is going to be the next race they attempt. I don't believe they're going to run Phoenix, but again, I don't have any confirmation on it besides what I heard on the radio. But they were talking about at least now it's possible maybe they have a different car that they're running at Phoenix. I believe Pockris was posting on his Twitter that there were teams unloading their Phoenix cars from the back of their haulers and swapping those out so they can send cars back east. But we'll see what happens with Gase. I believe there's certainly not an issue of too many teams coming to these races right now. If Atlanta and Vegas are any indication, having short fields ever since Daytona. So we'll see what happens there. But yes, as far as I know, I wouldn't expect Gase or the 66 to come back till Fontana, especially if they have this engine issue. I'm sure they probably want to take some more time working on it. But things can always change. We'll see what happens on the entry list this week. So stay tuned to the website from there. No word on the Gaunt brothers or Jonathan Cohen or the Ovica team. Haven't heard anything new on those fronts. 96 looks like they're actually trying to do a full season effort, or at least as many races as they can. I think this is the most tricky part of it, certainly not only being the beginning of the year, but then to go from Daytona to Atlanta and then back west to Vegas. It looks like they're going to at least try the races in the West Coast swing, but again, we'll see what happens from there. But an interesting scenario following at the back of the field for those of you that were following on Twitter. I was posting the updates as we were waiting for this gentleman to come over to the track and diagnose what was wrong with the 66, and all the radio communications were going through. And there was at least at one point a comment that they were saying that they wanted to switch to a different channel on the radio, and perhaps they didn't want all those communications brought out there. But it turned out to be really, especially given that there wasn't really a whole lot going on at the front of the field there. It was an interesting story, and certainly these are the kind of stories that I like to bring up here at the back of the field, because you didn't hear anything about it in the broadcast, and try to bring those out to you as best I can. I wish I had recorded it. Unfortunately, I don't have a recording of it. But if any of you have anything like that turns up, I think that would be some interesting stuff to listen to. I appreciate them being really cool about it. I mean, I know they said they were going to switch channels. I've heard differing things about if Channel 1 and Channel 2 are both publicly available. I'm not sure what the protocol is on that. I just go off of what I have on the race view on the tablet. But regardless, if they switch back, I appreciate that they did, because it was good to get a closeout on that story. And actually, the thing that was interesting on that at the end, and again, looking at my notes here, I'm going to go into this more in the article when it gets posted, was that the quote was, I believe it was from Carl Long. I don't know 100%. I don't know who else would have the authority to do this. Was saying that they were going to try to run the same sponsorship in California for free, and that they were going to run the, I believe it was the Nevada branch of the Donate Life company that's been backing Joey Gase, and whoever else was back in the 66 this weekend. They were going to keep those sponsors on the car at Fontana and work some deal out there. That had been relayed from the team's higher ups to the, I guess, the sponsor representatives that were at the track. That was being communicated through other team members during the radio, and then shortly after that, we didn't really hear anything else on the radio from the 66 for the rest of the race. So we'll see what happens on there. So if you see the 66 running in Fontana and it still has the Nevada organ donor logos on the car that it looked like it was going to be running at Vegas, that's the reason why. So look ahead to that. So we'll see what happens on that end. So yes, we're getting that's right. Quinn Huff running the 15, or not running the 15, running the 77 as the beginning of his schedule for this year. That was announced over the offseason. He was actually one of the first confirmed drivers for that team this year, after Jimmy McMurray really running an extra Chip Ganassi car under the Spire banner for Daytona. It'll be interesting to see what he can do. We're seeing a lot more of these young guys getting moved up the ranks, even at the back of the field. It's not just for the big teams. So we'll see what Quinn can do. We'll see what's happening with that. I don't know if he's a paid driver or not. I haven't heard anything about sponsorship or anything like that. If it's a multiple race deal, maybe there's something that's working on that. I know that he's had his own initiative. I believe it's a breast cancer initiative on the 46 when he was running in the Xfinity Series. I would expect that sponsorship would probably be what would jump over into the Cup Series. So we'll see what we'll see what happens there. But yeah, an unusual set of circumstances at the back of the field here. Excuse me. Not a lot of drama in terms of the position changing hands like we had in Atlanta, where you had three different teams that were behind the wall for extended periods of time, and then all of them coming back out. BJ McLeod was the only other driver that stayed in the garage for any prolonged period of time, about 37 laps in the early stages of the race. Shortly, during the whole deal with Joey Gase and the 66 team, I didn't see when exactly the 52 went behind the wall. By the time I pulled him up, he was already 9 laps down. And then he ended up still finishing the race under power. Gase, the only driver listed that actually fell out of the race for any reason. A very unusual event. But that's certainly going to be the story. Looking ahead is this aero package and what it's going to look like at Fontana. Is it going to be any different? Because it seemed like, from what I was watching at the front of the field there, it still seemed like they were running. I mean, again, the field was kind of unwinding at about the same rate. Maybe the initial restarts were a little crazier because people couldn't get out of each other's way. It looked really impressive down the back straightaway, especially the restart for the third segment. But a different set of circumstances there. It'd be interesting to see, if it does help out there, because I mean, having covered Fontana last year, just as a fan last year, I mean, it seemed like they actually put on a pretty good show. I just don't think it's broadcast very well. I know there were a lot of complaints about the race not seeming very interesting on TV, but I mean, it could just be that's just a factor of going to the racetrack versus watching it on TV. That's a whole different set of circumstances. But I maybe if it. This was apparently, I mean, a lot of the doubters about the aero package back in Atlanta, they were always pointing to this race in Las Vegas, because this is where they did all the testing, this is where they brought a whole lot of teams out, and they're running in pack formation, and what would happen on these longer runs. And, I mean, I'd still like to say it's kind of up in the air, and, we don't know what's happening with it exactly, but, we'll see what happens with it. I'm not sure, not sure how this is going to play out going forward, but, there's plenty enough mile and a half. So maybe, how much of this is a matter of the teams trying to figure it out, and how much of it, is just unavoidable. And this is just a part of running mile and a halves, and how much of it even is them running on a gradient bank track as well. I mean, we'll see what happens at, Fontana or Charlotte. Well, I guess Fontana has some. Does Fontana have gradient banking? I don't think it does, but somehow I know it has seams and all that. But a different different tracks and seeing how that works out. I guess Michigan would be more like what we're thinking of, a track with consistent banking. Um, it's yeah, still interesting to see that you had the same guys up front. I mean, the Penske guys certainly seem to have something figured out. So we'll see what happens going forward. Seems like they're actually vamping for time right now. I think the race wrapped up a little quicker than even they were anticipating, especially when you look at what happened during the weekend here as well. We'll kind of cue things backward here and look back at the weekend in action. The Truck Series and the Xfinity Series had both a mix of interesting things going on leading up to the Cup race here. Even though it was Kyle Busch winning both races, if you look further back in the pack, actually, it was kind of an interesting set of circumstances. We almost had a short field in the Truck Series this week after what happened with the 42 team when the hauler driver went out the wrong tunnel and damaged the hauler and apparently damaged the truck as well. From another report I read, that they had to withdraw. They almost had just 31 trucks, and it looked like Corbin Forrester, who originally wasn't entered in the race, ended up entering the race and actually came out with a good 14th place finish. Which is his best run of the year, as well as the best one of the year for the All Out Motorsports team, the number 7 truck out there. Kyle Busch, your winner from the pole, not really any surprise there. The only Cup regular that was in the field, and but over Brett Moffitt seemed like he was really getting something going there at the end, trying to reel him in. It was good to see him still play a factor in that finish. But looking back at during that, we talk about qualifying results or small teams kind of making a story for themselves. It's really unfortunate what happened with Corey Roper. But at the same time, how excited do you have to be about that number 04 out there in the Truck Series? They came out last year and very quietly had a really nice debut at Martinsville. They come out at Daytona. They were right up there among the leaders, end up getting run over, which is unfortunate. These are the things that happen when you have these small teams up there sometimes. But was running right up there doing what he needed to do and get the very best run that he could. Unfortunately, left with a wrecked race truck. And Las Vegas turned into the same kind of thing. He was very fast in round 1, actually lost, actually ended up down a couple of spots in round 2 when he qualified 5th. But a fantastic qualifying run for him, and good to see him get some TV time. And kudos also to the Fox Sports crew for talking to him during the lead up to the race. That was really, that's the kind of thing that I'd like to certainly see more of, and I know I'm not the only one. Good to see the 04 up there, even if it was for a little bit of time. Right when the race started, it seemed like he got split in a 3-wide thing, and then you had a wreck there that he had no real role in, but ended up running in the back of somebody else, and the chain reaction, and ended up falling further back in the field. But although he ended up falling to last briefly, he ended up finishing 24th at the finish. So the team's really determined to keep their truck out there too. And so kudos to those guys for getting, again, the best run they can. And that's something they can carry into Martinsville coming up at the end of the month, returning to the scene of their debut. Do I know what happened to the 33 sponsorship? I'm not sure about that. I didn't. You mean 33 in the Truck Series? So I heard. Yeah, I see Mr. Beast is a listed sponsor on that one. I didn't follow anything really that much with him, other than I noticed he was at the back of the field at the start of the race. Seeing the 33, Josh Rialm finishing 23rd in that race. Yeah, I don't know anything new, Matt DiBenedetto fan, about the sponsorship for the 33, but we'll see what I'll see what I can dig up on that. It would certainly be good if that team can pick up the pace there too. I mean, it's good to they're trying to get 2 trucks out there. Jesse Iwuji running the 34 truck, finishing 26th in the race. Some of you heard about that. He actually got called up by the Navy there to head back over to California for drill. Yeah, and he and his girlfriend drove 5 hours to get from Nevada all the way back to wherever he was stationed in California there, and made it out there. So certainly thank you to Mr. Iwuji for his service and his commitment certainly to both aspects of his life. Fascinating story with him. I know Williams talked a lot about him in his K&N articles from last year on the website, and I had the fortune of meeting Jesse at Phoenix last year too. Very, very professional, very laid back, and everything like that. So a good competitor that hopefully we see more of. And finished 26th in the race, finished under power. And hopefully, his sabbatical won't be so long, and we'll see him back in the series here sometime further down the line. Will the 34 trick be at Martinsville? Not sure offhand. I don't know if they've had different drivers running it already in this season. They had Jason White, the Canadian Jason White, not the veteran from the series, attempt to run it at Daytona. Didn't qualify there. Martinsville, like Daytona, is one of those races that you get a whole pretty big entry list of competitors. And so if they do attempt it, I mean, it's, they got just as good a chance as anybody of getting in there, but perhaps an increased risk of not making the show. Not sure what their strategy is with that going forward, but we'll see what happens there. Scott Stenzel, your last place finisher in the Truck Series race. That was the second consecutive year that he finished last in that event. Although it was 34 laps, an electrical issue, it's to be clear, and you saw this from the tweets posted that night. It wasn't a start and park effort by any means. That at least over the radio communications, they actually had some electrical issue that they were trying to track down. They had to pull behind the wall in the early laps and actually kind of diagnose what was happening with that truck. It was an issue that they were trying to track down. They also got the sponsorship from Personal Comfort. If you look at Scott Stenzel's Facebook page, actually did a lot of promotions to get that team some more attention. And that's going to be that's the story that I'm kind of concerned with going forward. Is of course the 63 now being entered under the Kopp Motorsports organization, DJ Kopp, who helped out Mike Mittler a couple of years ago when he started fielding trucks himself. You notice the 63 and the 83 sometimes run similar paint schemes, sometimes run interchangeably. And this year, for the first time, the 63 is now entered as Kopp's entry, as Mittler is still dealing with cancer right now and trying to, hopefully diagnose and resolve that. And he's had to spend some time away from the team there. So we certainly, send our best wishes out to him and his family, and hope that his recovery is quick and that we could see him back out at the track. Martinsville coming up. I mean, last fall they actually did the tribute on lap 63, honoring Mike for being involved in the sport since really the Truck Series started in 1995. And we'll see what happens to the team going forward. Hopefully they can attract some more sponsorship. But it's difficult for a lot of these small teams, just like that. Will the Donahues run truck races again this year? I mean, again, that's a very similar issue to what's going on with the Mike Mittler team. It seemed like both of them, Kyle and Kevin Donahue, jumped on board to run when Mittler and Kopp's entries were running side by side with just the 163 truck. I'm not sure if that's going to be an open situation for one or the other. Maybe they'll just have one of them and run instead of the other one. I'm not sure which one, but it's just speculation at this point. I think certainly there are more media concerns are getting to Martinsville, and getting whatever sponsorship they can to help them out. They called it over the radio. They were talking about the one-man band, that it's just that small of a group out there trying to make do with what they have. And whoever drives for them, they'll get certainly plenty of experience from how long that team's been in the sport. But we'll see what happens from there. Do you think we could see Angelo Ruck in the 99 this year? Well, I mean, it's possible. I'm not sure what's going on over at the Starcom team. I thought that I saw that they had the 99 hauler up for sale. Like, I don't know if they're just upgrading their equipment or something, because the 99 hauler did seem to be like an older model than the 00 one. But we'll see what happens with that. It was if they were to run a second car, I mean, that option's still on the table. And of course, with all these spots opened up, I'm sure some of these chartered teams are looking at the possibility of running a second car, maybe to get a little extra income in there. Although, I mean, again, there's so little information that's being disclosed about purse distribution, and all we hear about it is that the chartered teams get a much bigger piece out of it. So I'm not sure if it's really worth their weight. Yeah, I'm not sure. Yeah, I'm not sure either if we're going to see the 99 sometime soon, unless there's some real benefit to doing that for the Cope team. So we'll see. Also the let's see, chance Bailey Curry could run a Cup race. That would be interesting to see. I think Curry's an interesting personality. He's he seems like he's really been helping out a lot of these small teams, on the over the wall pit crew, making sure that he doesn't reach over the wall and put his hand on the ground, because apparently that's a penalty now. But hey there, Corey LaJoy fan 32. We'll see what we'll see what happens with the with Curry. I know that much like what was happening with some of these other teams at the back of the field, they were actually the last car contenders in the Xfinity Series side of it this weekend. And as was pointed out by a couple of viewers on Twitter, during Regan Smith's interview during the pre-race, you can see the 17 get pushed down pit road by an equipment truck. So clearly they had some kind of issue getting the car going. But in the first part of it, they were able to get the car back out there, and that dropped Joey Gase, who actually, whose difficult weekend started on the Xfinity Series side. Gase ended up finishing last in the Xfinity race after a tangle with Donald Thiege. I know I'm butchering that last name. Donald Thiege, I think it was. Driving the numbers 90 for Mario Gosselin's team, fellow Canadian, drives the number 90 car. So we'll see what happens with Curry going forward. It seems like he's really making the most out of these opportunities he's had in the Xfinity Series. We saw this last year when he was jumping out of the Truck Series and getting into the number 45 and 55 with JP Motorsports, and seemed to stick with them for a while there. So that was good to see. We'll see what anything happens with that going forward. As far as I know, I mean, any options are on the table, but it's the name of the game is still money. You got to get your sponsorship out there. You got to get a team that's willing to invest in you and get the equipment out there, and do the best run that you can. There we go. Curry was supposed to run the Atlanta race for Vision Motorsports. Okay, well, there you go. So, and Curry actually is another tie that you mentioned back to his run with, the DJ Kopp, as well as Mike Midler's team. I believe, if memory serves, he was running the 83 and or the 63 there for a while as well. So, all these people, again, there's a lot of floating around from one team to the next. So just look at the Truck Series results here again. How about Ross Chastain? And how about the broadcasters actually recognize how much this man's doing out there? I think I almost get the sense that when the Chip Ganassi deal fell through with DC Solar, people kind of forgot about him again. But this is a guy that's getting it done out there. As I said the other day, he's getting it done out there in the Xfinity Series, certainly with JD Motorsports, in the Truck Series with Nice Motorsports, and even in the Cup Series with the Premium Motorsports team. He may finish like 25th or 28th or something like that, multiple laps down, but that's even better than a lot of that team usually does with other drivers. So this is a guy that's, he could be on the verge of getting something done even without the Ganassi ride. I mean, who knows? That's certainly the run that he had with the second Kaulig Motorsports car at Daytona was impressive. It's just irritating when everybody's still, in the booth is still surprised that he's up there. It's getting to the point now where he's up there so regularly. And also, you want to talk about guys going for triple headers. This is a guy that did it in all three of the races run so far this year. So he's really getting it done, and it would be nice to see him, break through and get a good run that way. So a 10th place finish for him in the Truck Series. I believe it was about a good run in the Xfinity Series as well. Pulling that up. And come on, internet, don't lose on me now. Was it 7th? Yes, 7th in that one. Running for the Xfinity Series. And then the Cup Series, a bit further back in the rankings, after starting at the back of the field, he is shown back in 33rd, but still under power, even with 7 laps down. And actually finished ahead of the chartered cars of Matt Tifft, Cody Ware, and Reed Sorensen. Well, actually, and BJ McLeod, now that Rick Ware's team has 2 charters, or at least one to pick one up. So, yeah. Domindu, if you're interested in getting a LASCAR hat or shirt or anything like that, I'll put in the link there for that. I have the store link set up. If you apologize, the brief plug here, I'll put that up. Actually, that brings up something. May as well bring this up at the same time. I've changed some of the levels on my Patreon for this week. I was looking at kind of the different levels. I was certainly ambitious in thinking what range. I wasn't sure what range people were interested in. I'm just kind of playing off what Gluck and some of these other guys are doing and everything. But I think the lower end levels seem to be a bit more where it's at. So I set that up so now $5 level gets you a bumper sticker. $10 level does the loose die cast, and $25 level does a t-shirt. And we're going to leave it at that for now. If things pick up from there, we'll try different things. But you can check out my Patreon, and I'll put the link up there again for that if you guys want to check that out and see if you're interested in that. I need to create some more bonus content to put in there as well now that I've moved this this video to the page here. And there we go. All right. So yeah, Domindo, I don't have any free ones right now, man. But you know, again, we'll see if things change going forward. But believe me, they'll still be up there whenever you're ready, man. We'll hook you up, okay? But yeah, the interesting look at everything's here. Let's see. Let's see. Lost my train of thought. So much stuff has been happening this weekend. So we talked about Ross Chastain. We talked about Scott Stenzel in the Truck Series. We talked about all that going forward. We'll get more into the Xfinity race here going ahead. I know we've mentioned seeing Ryan Sieg and getting mentioned in the comments here too, justifiably so. Just looking over the rest of the Truck Series lineup, we talked about Corey Roper and Jesse Iwuji. Looking at the back of the field, Stephen Parsons, unfortunate that they had some mechanical issues there that put them behind the wall, finishing 31st out of 32 starters there. Good to see Stephen back out there. You know, Phil Parsons' son getting back out there. And also for the team, the Beaver Motorsports team. This team withdrew in the first 2 rounds of the season, and it was good to see them back out there. But Kyle Busch pretty much had the field covered, although he, you know, not by as big of a margin as you would think. Brett Moffitt really seemed to kind of have his number there, and it just didn't quite shake out at the finish. But certainly a good run for them. Looking back now, I want to look at the Xfinity race results here as well. Getting back into that, yes, let's talk about Ryan Sieg and the 6th place finish that he had in Lombard Brothers Gaming, number 39. Another great run for them. I know the qualifying was washed out, so you know, maybe you know, who knows how he would have done if he had a good qualifying run to begin with. But you know, good finish for him getting up there. This is a team that continues to outperform any limitations that are in front of them, and you know, it's good to see even, you know, the teammates Jeff Green and Josh Bilicki being so supportive of that organization and lending their experience. And you know, even when both of them don't have the funding to run full races, they put as much effort in getting that 39 up there as high as it can. And it seems like it's only a matter of time until they break through. I know that seems difficult with all these Cup teams in there and GMS racing really taking off and Junior Motorsports and everything, but the margin doesn't seem that far off. They seem like they're actually kind of closing the gap a little bit. And you know, the start they've had to this season has just been phenomenal. So look forward to seeing them go ahead, maybe in those standalone weekends at on the road courses or at Iowa Speedway. Those would be places that you certainly got to look at them. Certainly the 39 had good runs there before. Also looking further back, the other story that I think doesn't get as much attention is the SS Greenlight Racing team, Bobby Daughter's team. Seeing the 07 and the 08 up there, I am so impressed with Greg Alding and the start of this season. I actually, the Xfinity race, I was listening to that mostly on the radio, which was great because it actually tracked a lot of what was happening around the Lucky Dog spot when Kyle Busch was trying to get that after having the loose wheel issue earlier in the race. You know, seeing what was happening with the 08 going through the field, I believe he was 18th at the end of one of the stages there, and he kept Kyle Busch from getting Lucky Dog under that caution and got the 08 back in contention. Galding ends up finishing 12th, and this was all after starting 35th in the race. I mean, you want to talk about Kyle Busch coming from the back of the field at Atlanta trying to get back up there. Talk about Greg Galding going from 35th to 12th in the running order, and then finishing right behind his teammate, Ray Black Jr., getting a great finish, finishing 11th, just outside the top 10, actually beating Galding by a spot, both of them 2 laps down at the finish, but good runs for the both of them. And how about that Xfinity race? I mean, I'm sure none of us really would have anticipated, I certainly didn't, that with this new aero package in the Cup Series, that the Xfinity race would end up having the closest battle for the lead. The radio guys seemed like they could hardly stand themselves at the finish of that because there was so much going on. and Christopher Bell and Kyle Busch just waging war. You throw the other competitors in the mix there. Tyler Reddick getting up there. The three of them battling for position, and just amazing stuff. I mean, it must be either just a combination of. I mean, Christopher Bell, he's on the verge of something. He's working his way up there, and it's only a matter of time that he finds his way into Cup, and we really see how fast that kid already is, and that was very impressive what he was doing there. And then unfortunately didn't have the finish to show for it. Bell ends up finishing 13th, and then you have Tyler Reddick down in 14th. Both of them with damage in the wrecks at the end of the race there. John Hunter Nemechek inherits a second place finish for GMS Racing. But at the back of that field, we talked about Bailey Curry earlier, driving the number 17, the Rick Ware racing car that had a good run at Atlanta. Curry's car had an issue at the start of the race. We mentioned earlier it was last for most of it there. Even when Joey Gase and Donald Thieg had the accident in turn 3, both of them got dropped down. But kudos again to the Rick Ware team for getting that car back out there. Curry ends up finishing 34th, and Gase ends up finishing last. Potentially, pending the disqualification results, we're still waiting to hear. Gase finishing last in both the Xfinity and the Cup Series races. But we'll see what happens there. Looking further back, Zane Smith had a good run until he got collected in one of those wrecks back there. Again, still the SS Greenlight Racing team. Going to be very interested to see what they do at Phoenix and going forward, and seeing what happens. Looking at the results here, Jennifer Jo Cobb's been doing decent since her DNQ in Daytona. Yeah, I'd have to agree with that. Let's take another look at her runs. Because the only measure that I've had of that is I don't believe I've had to put her in the list with having bottom 5 finishes so far. So that's it's always little steps, but that's a progression up the ranks there. Cobb still finishing 27th in the race on Friday in the Waldo's painting machine. But yeah, 22nd at Atlanta, 27th at Vegas. Getting those finishes to kind of get up into the upper echelon ahead of maybe some other teams that they were trailing before. Good run for Cobb, working hard to get that operation underway. Excuse me. Haven't seen her field the second truck here yet this year, but we'll see what happens later this year if there's another issue with short fields in the truck series. It seems like they're pretty, they kind of stay on top of that. Let's see. Talking about Josh Bilicki, talking about Ryan Sieg. We'll see what happens with both of them. So, Ross Chastain 7th in the race. We talked about him. Cole Custer seemed to kind of fall off there in the Xfinity race, ended up finishing 9th. Let's look further back to the other teams. Timmy Hill, this got mentioned. We talked about Carl Long's team, Motorsports Business Management, and as mentioned earlier, that's really distracting. I got King of Queens on TV over here, and that's pulling my mind away. You had the 42 with Chad Fincham there, as well as Timmy Hill, the 66, both of them finishing inside the top 25. With Chad Fincham in 21st, he started outside pole by virtue of the owner's points left over from the Chip Ganassi team. Good to see them up there, even if it was just for a brief moment. And Timmy Hill going from 34th to finishing 23rd at the finish in the 66. That's the same Benny Parsons throwback that Motorsports Business Management ran last week, as well as last September at Darlington. Good to see them get the good finish out there. So good run for them. Other than that, yeah, Morgan Shepherd back out there again. Hopefully they have a more drama-free trip to Phoenix coming up than they did last November when they had the accident in Texas and then had to get the car pieced back together at JD Motorsports to get back up there. Looking further back at some of the other teams back there, Brandon Brown has also been very quietly consistent this year. That 86 team, 17th at Las Vegas. They were 13th at Atlanta and 18th at Daytona. They have not finished outside the top 20 this year, and that is very impressive for a team that has very little sponsorship and just trying to make ends meet. Actually, 9, 10, 11, so counting on my hands here, they've completed all but 5 laps run this year and led 2 laps at Daytona. So if you're looking for fantasy racing bargains in the Xfinity series, I would look at that number 86. Kudos to them. Kudos to them for a good run. Jeff Green swapped rides, as was mentioned here in the chat. Swapped rides with the Jeff Green and Josh Bilicki swapping rides. Green ended up further down up the rankings than he had been before. Green still without a last place finish this year in the Xfinity Series with the different teams that have fallen in there. Let's see. Timmy Hill may run some Cup races this year. I mean, we'll see what happens with the 66 going forward. It seems like Gase's sponsorship thing is certainly the thing that's helping keep that Cup operation going. Although the focus seems to be more on the Xfinity Series, at least from what they said last year. That could always change. I know the original report I remember over the offseason was that they're going to run 2 Cup cars, and there were rumors about possibly Mark Thompson coming back again, running Daytona like he did last year. That ended up not happening. Timmy Hill was supposed to be one of the cars. That didn't happen. So we'll see what happens with them, but certainly the options are open. And by saving this engine, hopefully from what happened today at Las Vegas, hopefully they're back on the right track there. I'm just taking another look at the clock. We are an hour. We are coming up on an hour since the finish of the race, so we should be closing in a little bit. Just responding to a text here. All right. Yeah, Chad Fincham's another cool dude. I have to agree. That's another guy. I didn't publish it in my article from last year, but I caught up to him after the 40 car fell out at Phoenix last year, and he was very, very friendly. I mean, all these guys are. I mean, I'm having a hard time thinking of people that are really kind of, I've had guys I've had drivers that I've talked to that, maybe they were just busy with something or they just weren't up to it. I mean, I'm used to that from what I cover. Look at the back of the field. I mean, if you see my white hat coming, it probably means something bad's happened to your car or something like that, and you probably don't want to talk to me. So I anticipate that, but again, a lot of these teams coming back there. I mean, when you see these smaller teams and these competitors that don't get talked about that much, it's nice to give them some press and talk about them a bit. But Fincham was very cool. He talked about making his Cup debut last year when he was driving at Bristol and how exciting it was for him and potential of perhaps doing some more stuff going forward. Nothing confirmed. And of course, like we were talking about with motorsports business management, other things coming up ahead and pending, their engine situation, I think is the first priority right now, and see what happens. And we'll see what happens with, well, I mean, Phoenix might be an interesting weekend for the teams that we've been missing this year, because Obaika and the New York racing team, Jonathan Cohen's team, were both at Phoenix last November. Now, they were also both at Texas the previous week, so maybe it had more of a consequence to do with that part of the season and the transition between those events. Maybe now where they're hopping around and just getting into the West Coast swing, I would think that a lot of the teams that are in the West Coast swing right now are pretty much going to be the teams that we're going to have until that wraps up. So, maybe that changes, but I don't know. Brian Keselowski running a Cup race in the 66. That would be pretty neat. It's been a while since we've seen him behind the wheel. I know he's still involved with the 66. At least he was last year, working with the crew. So that'd be cool to see. But the Obaika team and the New York racing team, I have no idea what's going on with those, and I certainly hope that in the interest of getting as many teams out there as possible, it'd be great if they could get back up there. Not hearing anything new on that. Let me check the Twitter feed here in the meantime. Let's check on the status with inspection. There's probably not much going on here. Steve O'Donnell assessing the situation from the racing today. According to Bob Pockris, said he felt a step in the right direction, but not satisfied with the outcome. Well, there's different. We'll see what actually happens in the race here coming up. But Phoenix, I mean, who knows what's going to happen there? I mean, that's almost more of a short track than it is a downforce track, and what combination of the package they're going to be running going forward. Let's see. Still not hearing any calls on the inspection from here. The quotes from Steve O'Donnell, you can see him on the Twitter feed. Let me make a copy of the link to the tweet, and I'll put that in here so you can check it out. Donald interview, and you can check that out. This is assessment from the race there. Do I like IndyCar at all? I mean, yeah. I want to be into it much more than I am. That's not really a sport that I've always been into. I like the Indy 500, especially, really it seems like since 2011, just about every every Indy 500 that's been run has been like an instant classic. So that's something I definitely circle on my calendar. As to the week to week of the series, I kind of leave that to David Land and some of those guys over there. That's not really my area of expertise. Although I did enjoy covering the race at Sonoma and coming out and supporting that event. Certainly running the season finale and seeing the competitors through there. That was always a fun one to cover, and matching that, especially when it came to be the same time as the start of the chase cutoff there in the Cup Series or the playoff start. So that was so yeah. Some of the short answers I like that, and be interesting. Go to St. Pete next weekend. Hey, that's a great time to go. That's their Daytona or their season opener rather. So that should be a good show. Hope you have a good time at that. Still waiting to see anything from here. We go. Brian Kozlowski's Chad Fincham's crew chief. Oh, that'd be great. Oh wait, is that about Fincham or is that about? Yeah, I believe. Let me see. I haven't heard that, but that'd be great. Yeah, if he's working as a crew chief too, because he seemed like he was certainly hands on with the 66 on the Cup side there. But that would explain what he does on his Saturdays too. Looking up here, and the different levels. Still waiting to hear on the Cup results. Let me just see if there's anything else standing out here. We mentioned Kurt Busch and the Southwest Tour race. The paint scheme that he ran there, the throwback to the number 70 that he ran in the late 90s, winning the 1999 Southwest Tour Series Championship. Good to see that paint scheme back out there. It's unfortunate it didn't end up in victory lane. Looks like the Fords just had everybody's number, but a good run for him. I was surprised by Ricky Stenhouse Jr. staying up there after he seemed to kind of taper off at Atlanta last week. Good to get a sixth place finish out of it and, kind of get his season headed back in the right direction. Further back, unfortunate, not as many surprises as maybe we would have hoped in the finishing order there. Although it was good to see Daniel Hemrick and Austin Dillon as good as they were in qualifying and in practice. It's unfortunate that Hemrick in particular didn't get the finish that he to show for it. I know we talked about the 8 and the 47 last week and the great runs that both had in Atlanta before they had some misfortune at the end of the race. And Hemrick in particular seemed like he really was going to make a statement at Vegas with that great qualifying run. Unfortunately, at least in the unofficial results here, shows him 23rd and Ryan Preece in 25th. So, a bit of a learning situation for that. But of course, everybody figuring things out with this new aero package, and I guess it's one of the drawbacks of having the new aero package and trying something different. So maybe you have a group of drivers that are more suited to the way it was before, and it doesn't quite shake out as well as one may have hoped. Hopefully that'll work out well in the weeks ahead. Let me see here. Yeah, it's too bad Sonoma's not on the end of the IndyCar schedule. I mean, it may not have been the most competitive race most of the years, but they always put on a great venue down there. Not to make this turn into too much about IndyCar, but I really liked that they did like the championship banquet in San Francisco. I mean, certainly a beautiful place to do that, and the wineries and all that other stuff. I mean, it's nice to have it somewhere on the schedule, and having it in the finale, I think, was a huge get. It's just unfortunate that it's shaken out the way that it has. But I think that it's going to be interesting to see what happens at Laguna Seca this year. May check that one out this fall, and that'll be an interesting thing to see. Let's see. Look at this earlier comment. Yeah, Ray Black Jr. or Ray Black II, which is the way to show him on the entry list. I've seen both too. I just kind of go Ray Black Jr. because that's just what I've seen on the results that I've seen so far. I haven't interviewed him yet. That would be one I should just ask him personally. That's just like when it comes to the driver, the number 10 in the Cup Series, I always pronounce his first name Arik, like Arik Goldfinger, because I always thought that was how you pronounce that with A. But I think he pronounces it Eric himself, so that would be the way to pronounce that. But a different deal there. Let's see. Looking further back, let's just take another look at the Twitter and see. I think we have another post. Playoff grid. There we go. Nothing yet. Still looking. Let's look at the point standings here. Pockrass just posted that on his Twitter here. Joey Logano now the point leader after his win today, taking over Denny Hamlin. Keselowski would be third ranked with his win at Atlanta, fifth overall in the main point standings, but third in the third seed. Kyle Busch now the highest ranked driver without a win so far this year, with Harvick behind Kyle Larson. And further back, let's see. And of course, looking at the bottom of the field, Cody Ware being 34th with the 3 starts. That's shown lowest ranked, at least of the screen cap that was shown here. Let's take another look. And let's see. Dark and then it's pronounced Derek. Okay, well there you go. See, there we go. That makes a perfect way to pronounce that name there. So yeah, so it's okay. So it says Eric Almirola. That's the correct pronunciation. That works for me. Yeah, I mean, as for the Laguna Seca taking the place of Sonoma and IndyCar, I mean, yeah, it's unfortunate the races didn't turn out the way that they could have there, but I think it just comes down to the racecraft of the different series that compete there. I think even if you watch like the 24 Hours of Lemons at Sonoma, they put on a great show out there. So we'll see what happens. Let's take another look. Get another drink here. Let's take another look at the list here. 47 green flag passes for the lead versus 9 in 2018. I mean, okay. I mean, there was a difference in how many passes were there. It did seem like it was going back and forth quite a bit, but I'm gonna have to rewatch it and kind of get a better feel for what was happening at the front of the field. The Joey Gase thing ended up being more engrossing than I thought it would be. And that's, of course, always a challenge with covering the back of the field. It's not it can really pull you away from what's happening at the front of the field, and I'm not even sure if I quite have the full discipline for it either, because sometimes it's you look up at something and then maybe you miss something on the headphones there, but close the gap as best we can and try to get you those stories. I'm going to be interested in if we get that as the full write-up for the deal there. Yeah, track records: 47 green flag passes throughout the race, 3,345 total green flag passes. I mean, I don't know how that's. I mean, it seemed like if you're looking just strictly for a number of passes, then I guess that was the advantage. I mean, I've certainly seen worse Vegas races. I mean, let me put it that way. I think that's really the way to look at it. And I'm not sure if I count last year's as one of them, but I mean, I wouldn't say it was the most memorable either. We'll see what the situation is there. What's this? Okay, looking at another list here. Green flag passes for the lead. Okay, looking at this pulled up under Sirius. Was it? Yeah, Sirius XM NASCAR radio channel comparing the number of green flag passes for the lead over the last few years. This year again, as it said, 47 green flag passes for the lead and 100-lap green flag run to end the race. The 100-lap green flag run to end the race is the longest by far since at least going back to 2015 on this chart here. There's actually 2017. There was only a 9-lap sprint to the finish, but even then, the number of green flag passes for the lead much higher. 9 in the March of last year. 15 in the March of 17, 22 in the March of 2016, and 18 in the March of 2015. This doesn't include the race last September. Yeah, but I mean, actually a little bit under the number of different leaders, and certainly under the number of cautions and caution laps. Yeah, I mean, I think that's really going to be, maybe. I mean, I guess it's going to be the issue with this aero package is we're going to have to just keep moving the field goal further and further back. It's like, okay, well, we're going to wait till Vegas to figure out what the aero package is. Okay, well, maybe we'll wait till a couple of downforce tracks to figure it out. Oh, okay, maybe we'll wait till half the season's gone by. It's just going to be that. And I guess in the aggregate, if it turns out that it's, consistently entertaining, or you kind of see some hallmarks of this new aero package, then that would be satisfying. Much like when you have restrictor plate racing and you start having the packs versus people being all strung out. I think that's maybe what we're waiting for at this point. I mean, certainly the only thing you could really see from the Vegas race today was, really crazy restarts, but that's been something that NASCAR has been hammering on for a long time, certainly with these stage cautions, and before that, all those ridiculous debris cautions trying to jumble things up. We'll see what happens there. Let's see. Still waiting on any calls from Vegas. Let's take another look at the timer. Okay, we have now had an hour and 10 minutes, an hour and 9 minutes. Yes, an hour and 9 minutes since the race finished. I basically started that during the victory celebrations immediately after the race. I mean, it depends from one fan to the next, like what you're looking for in a race. Are you looking for really close racing? Are you looking for photo finishes? Are you looking for a lot of accidents? There's a lot of different things that can bring people into NASCAR or into motorsports in general. And I guess you're never really going to satisfy all of them because, one is going to be kind of a takeaway from the other. I mean, I was thinking back to the Xfinity race. I was really hoping that it would just stay green for the rest of the finish because those three guys were just beating and banging on each other. And I really wanted to know if Bell could just chase down Kyle a second time and really take it to him and have a good competition for the finish. Turned out that didn't end up happening. So, sometimes, I'm sure people that like overtime finishes and restarts really enjoy that, or people that like accidents. But maybe in terms of a race where somebody closes back in, catches back up to the leader, you actually have a good one-on-one battle. Certainly, they would be frustrated by it. And they all don't really fit together very well. But I guess that's just part of it. So, we'll see what happens going forward. And I'm finding I'm saying that a lot. Talk about a trend. Have to make that into a T-shirt. See what happens going forward. Let's see. Still waiting on a call from the field here. Looking further back here. Still looking at the playoff grid. Nothing new there. Refreshing the results from the race here. Still shows it about the same here. Joey Logano, your winner. And Joey Gase, your last place finisher, ended up in the 38th spot. First last place finish for car number 66 at Las Vegas. You would think that would be a number that, Michael McDowell actually is the all-time leader with 3 last place finishes at Vegas, including this spring race last year. Coming into this event, he finished the 20th, 28th, and 29th last place finishes of his career all came at Las Vegas. And he's the only driver that's finished last there more than once. Joey Gase, if it turns out that he did officially take that spot, will continue that streak, certainly. McDowell's finishes actually came with 3 different teams. He drove one with Phil Parsons in 2013, once with the Levine family team in 2014, and then with Front Row Motorsports just last year. Short list of those drivers, but it'll be interesting going forward. I think it was like his race because of expectations. Yeah, I mean the expectations were hyped pretty high for this one, even right up to the green flag. Maybe more realistic expectations for the race. I mean, perhaps you had a closer finish. I mean, you can't really manufacture a close finish. I think that's one thing we found, certainly from Atlanta and Vegas. Although we did have close finishes. It just came down to the second place driver just running out of time. I mean, we've seen that both times. And maybe when you get further ahead, these drivers figuring out strategy and figuring out what's the best way to get back up there. It's going to be a situation where these teams are going to just be like, okay, we need to start getting our run maybe about 20 laps from the finish instead of 10 laps from the finish, and they can chip off some time that way, or how they manipulate traffic. A lot of things need to be reconsidered again, much like, again, back when restrictor plates were first brought in 1988 to the plate tracks. We'll see what happens. But that's going to be that's going to be an interesting story going ahead. I mean, really, Keselowski was actually a bit closer to Logano than Truex even was with Keselowski last week, so that was good to see. Um, but again, you can't manufacture a photo finish. I mean, there's a lot of races that have great finishes, but maybe aren't the best races. I think that's really the big thing that would draw a lot of people in. And it wouldn't matter how long the race was or how many cautions there were, or how many accidents there were. If the racing in between is really entertaining and you have people kind of running door to door or sliding around or that kind of thing. I mean, but how do you create that? If you, other than build a time machine, go back to the 1980s. Um, I'm not sure what the best solution is that. Um, but Yeah, larger group of contenders. Looking at Beast of Metal's comment here, looking for a larger group of contenders like 2003 or so. Not where only 5 drivers have a serious shot, barring Deus Ex Machina. Yeah, that would be great. I mean, I've thought of this in the past. I mean, not your comment, but I mean, I've in terms of what creates a really strong field. I mean, I'm very big on teams. Like I think that there needs to be a lot of quality teams out there, and a lot of teams that have the resources and get as many of them in there as possible. So maybe you have a DNQ list of like 8 or 10 people every week, and that keeps everyone on their toes. I mean, a team that's working its way up the ranks. They get into the show, they get the best finish they can. They try to put those resources into the next week, but they have to be kept honest every week and try to keep up with the progress and everything. They can't rest on their laurels. That's why I don't really like the top 35 rule. I don't like the charter system. I don't like any of that. I think if you have a lot of these teams up there, and of course a lot of teams are a lot of open seats, so you get more drivers in there and more chances of finding somebody that can actually compete at this level, or more opportunities for people to come up there and compete at this level. Those are things that really need to be pushed on. And you look at different seasons, like we talked a while back about the 1994 season and how many quality teams were sent home each week. It's not just the Brickyard 400, but I mean, like so much of the season. Harry Gant was doing his retirement season that year and missed a couple races, and he won some poles that year. So when teams like that are getting bumped out, it really, I think that really had a big role in the quality of NASCAR fields from 1995 into the turn of the millennium. I think you had some teams that just got their feet into it, and maybe some teams that washed out and weren't quite ready for prime time, or maybe some teams that had been in there for a long time and it kind of either flamed out or just lost sponsorship, or the sponsorship changed hands. But you suddenly had a lot of these teams that were really, it challenged everybody, and you had to take on all comers that were coming in. And this is another thing that, I mean, this needs to be talked about too. With Kyle Busch approaching his 200th win across the top 3 series, and I know that he himself has insisted that he's not in the same league as Richard Petty when you talk about the differences between those two records. It's when you had the Cup Series and just had the one series, you had to compete with whoever was in there, and there were races that were just on the West Coast, and they had ones that were just you had a northern swing back then, a northern tour. That was part of the circuit when you had to run in like different tracks in New York and everything. So you had to take the very best of all these different places across the country. And this isn't a situation where it's like now where you have the best drivers from around the country that could get into these 36 chartered rides. You're putting a cap on it. You're putting an artificial limit on that. This is going around the country, and maybe you're competing in Sacramento one day, and you're competing in Islip the next day, and then you're road racing in Linden, New Jersey. You are running in all those races and competing against the best of those people and winning each of those times, winning 200 times in his career. That's why Richard Petty's streak is more impressive than what Kyle Busch has accomplished. What Kyle Busch has accomplished is, yes, okay, there's groups of different drivers that are particular to the Truck Series and groups that are particular to the Xfinity Series, but it's all in the same tracks. I mean, there's even with the few deviations where they have standalone races and everything. It's not like these are all the comers that came into the Cup Series. It'd be like if the Xfinity and the Truck Series competitors were part of like a much longer list of people that just competed in Cup, and they got to compete against the other Cup drivers. Let's keep that in mind too. All those times Richard Petty won those races, he was not just competing against the local drivers in the area. He was competing against the very best drivers that were in Cup in those races. Now, not all the Cup drivers ran all the races. That was another reason that Petty won a lot of races and championships, is he was one of the few guys that ran most, if not all, of the races. It's hard to imagine now because in the modern era, you can't afford to really miss even one race and still consider yourself a championship challenger. Now, playoffs, of course, have corrected a lot of that, or messed with a lot of that. But this is that's what I would say. Yeah, I would say Petty did it in one series and didn't just dabble in a bunch of lower series. That it would be the equivalent of. I think it would be the equivalent if Richard Petty made it in NASCAR, won like his first couple of championships, and then insisted that all these celebrity races or something, like maybe he just goes to like, some short track against just, that's not even NASCAR affiliated. That's not even like a NASCAR sanctioned event, and wins in those races and then insists that counts towards his win total. Well, if he did that, then, for example, if that were like the kind of standard, then we wouldn't be talking about Dick Trickle having like the longest streak without, one of the longest streaks without a Cup Series win. We would be talking about the hundreds of short track races that he won in his career, or we would be talking about it with a lot of these other different competitors. So I think that, yeah, I think that was really the biggest thing. I think that's the biggest thing with the difference between Petty and the difference between Kyle Busch. And to Kyle's credit, I think he recognizes that. The interviews that were talked about before this broadcast here today, he certainly deserves to celebrate it. Although I think, again, it's playing with house money there when you're in the Xfinity and the Truck Series there. But, it's you get the best equipment out there. And if it wasn't him, I mean, look at the entry list this week. Okay, yeah, he won the Xfinity and he won the truck race, but he was like pretty much he was the only Cup Series regular in the Xfinity race, unless you count Ross Chastain. And he was the only one of only two, the only one in the Truck Series race that was a Cup Series regular. And he's one of only two drivers that were Cup Series regulars, him and Austin Dillon, that were running in the Xfinity race. And so if you count, whenever I look at like Cup regulars or invaders, I count somebody that's won in the Cup Series that is then competing in Xfinity or trucks. And I think once you've won a Cup race, you pretty much don't belong there anymore in the lower series. You've proved that you can beat at least once everybody else that's out there. So it's a difficult thing. It's inevitable because you have so many races in the Cup Series and you have so many races in Xfinity and trucks, and at least they're not going for championships, and everything like they used to. And Kevin Harvick and Kyle and Keselowski were just doing that. And I've said my piece on a lot about that, about who's controlling who here, when they say that, oh, the sponsor wants the Cup guy to run the to run the Xfinity races. The sponsor wants the guy to run the Truck Series, and it's like, well, who's controlling what? If you're the team or the sanctioning body, just say, no, you can't do that. I mean, if the sponsor wanted to change the name of Hendrick Motorsports to, I don't know, like the Vaseline Motorsports or something, like Vaseline comes in and says they want to do that. I mean, maybe they don't even put the money into it or anything like that. I mean, are they going to just do it just at the drop of a hat? I mean, they don't have to. I mean, they could just say, look, we're not going to do that. I mean, that's kind of one of those things. But, well, yeah, well, the IK9 sponsorship with Jeffrey Earnhardt, you mentioned that, Matt DiBenedetto fan. I mean, I'm sure Jeffrey would have rather been in that car. I mean, he finally gets a top 10 in that car. I mean, yes, it's Joe Gibbs equipment, and you put just about anybody in there and they're going to at least be a factor. I mean, who knows if they're going to pull the win off or anything like that, but it would be nice to see if Jeffrey could follow that up with a good run there. Especially since Kyle struggled so much in that race. I know a lot of that was because of the loose wheel and how early that happened, and that happened to Green. But even then, when he gets up to the front, I mean, it was a close race. And that's the flip side of all this too. When you talk about the tweet that I reacted to yesterday, that Christopher Bell was saying that he wants the Cup Series guys up there. Well, my thought is, if you want the Cup Series guys in the lower series because you think you need a measuring stick against which to show like how good you are, it used to be that they would just go to Cup. And I don't see how that's not an option now when you have short fields and not enough cars out there. Like, and I'm sure the subtext of this is that saying like, well, look, I want to drive Gibbs equipment, so I still have a good chance at racing against Kyle Busch. See, the deck's already slanted because you're not competing against Kyle Busch with lesser equipment. You were competing against Kyle Busch in Joe Gibbs equipment with the same people that he's running with in the Cup Series. And when you're and if you're Christopher Bell, not to say he hasn't earned it, quite the opposite. Christopher Bell has absolutely earned it. But I think it's interesting to me that the option at least hasn't been presented, or maybe hasn't been considered, that these Xfinity or Truck Series drivers, and maybe Christopher's just alone in this, that they wouldn't just try to find a way to run an underfunded Cup car and just do the very best what they can. I'm sure the underfunded teams would love to have somebody on there that could bring in, sponsorship. And I know that there's technical alliances and there's development programs, but all that. But we've seen this with just the alliances that we're seeing between the Penske's and the Wood brothers and things like that. The open teams present an opportunity for some of these other guys to actually get up there. And if there's plenty of spots open, I would rather we have a 40-car field of maybe somebody that's, a name that's a rising star in the sport, get a chance in a lower funded car and just see what they can do. And that will be the measuring stick, because you're going to go in there and you're going to see how good they are in their element. You're never going to see Kyle Busch or Jimmy Johnson or Brad Keselowski as good as they can be unless they're in their actual comfort zone, which is in the Cup Series, in the absolute most elite division with the best of everything. It's and perhaps it would be a good humbling experience for some of these kids. Because I don't know. I think I don't know if they need that or anything. I don't think that's the case. I think Christopher Bell could hop into a Cup car now and be pretty dang competitive, quite honestly. So, we'll see what happens. But that's my 2 cents on that. And I think that's the irritation. I think when you have two sides that are complaining about this, when there's clearly a third option that would be the best way to settle it in general, where there's Xfinity guys that say we need the Cup guys to run our circuit to see if we're good enough to get in the Cup. And then you have Cup guys that say, well, we need to be in Xfinity because the sponsor wants us to be there. Well, then get the Xfinity guys up into Cup. Get them, just go ahead and just do it. I don't know what the status of Rookie of the Year is and everything like that, and what limitations there are on that. But I think there are enough. There's certainly enough spots open, that you can at least get somebody in there, and that would be interesting to see. But I know you don't want to rush people up there, and that's the other issue. You don't want to get somebody in there that's going to be in before they're ready. But if they want to see how good they are, and especially if they're just spanking the field in the Xfinity Series like Bell's been doing. The run at Atlanta was ridiculous. If you're able to do that, you're ready for Cup. I don't care who else is in it. If there's no Cup guys, or if there's two, or whatever, if you're able to do that in the Xfinity Series, you're ready for Cup. We've seen guys try to get up there like Justin Allgaier and Michael Lynette that have gone up there, and Allgaier certainly more than Annette in the past, being even more a consistent contender of the Xfinity Series and getting up there. But that's really where I sit on that. So again, it's just the latest chapter of the ongoing Bushwhacker saga, and just figuring out where everything stands on it. But we'll see. We'll see what I'm about to say it again. We'll see what happens on that going forward. That is insane. I need to find a new catchphrase. That one just stinks. Let me find here. Okay. Pockris announces the points report he posted earlier appears to have had some errors. He'll run updated standings when he gets them. Okay, so it's like NASCAR still figuring out what's going on with that. Still waiting to see the call on here. I haven't seen one yet. Should be any moment now. We haven't reached the moment that the timer. Oh, we're right down to it. We are about 2 minutes away from reaching the hour-and-a-half mark, and then we find out if anything new has been happening at the back of the field, or if Joey Gase is going to have himself a doubleheader article tonight for the Xfinity Series and the Cup. I still figure out how I handle that. Maybe, if I did a separate article, I'd just get repetitive. So usually when I see, you notice this, usually when I see that there's somebody that finishes last in more than one series, I usually pair them up. It's usually why I wait until Sunday to post all three of them. Otherwise, I just post them each day and do that. But it's kind of a good way to kind of wrap up the whole weekend. Maybe that'll change further down the line, but that's kind of where I'm standing with that. Let's see. So, any other thoughts on really the weekend in racing? Anything else that I haven't talked about here? I'd like to look at the race results and kind of pick out some good stories. There's even though in Las Vegas, this is one of the races I think that would be a good indicator of the challenges of kind of covering some of these races where maybe not as much happens, but finding other things to kind of catch and make a theme out of here. Kyle Busch not quite getting the triple header. Unofficially still third in the race, though, after leading 13 laps. Let's see. Last 10 laps, the best man wins, says Penske. Okay, well, that's about the way they raced it. I'm glad there aren't team orders in NASCAR, at least not visible team orders. Who knows what's going on behind the scenes? But decent racing between Keselowski and Logano. Nice, clean competition there. So it's good to see. Thoughts on the? Oh, I'm sorry. Yes, the Mike Seneca situation. Yeah, I haven't. Thank you for reminding me. I saw that come up there earlier, but I forgot to respond to it, so I apologize. Mike Seneca is an interesting story in this, and this will come up actually a little bit in the Scott Stenzel article, because the latest chapter of the Mike Seneca thing had been the story over the offseason was that Seneca was going to drive the 83 this year, and they had a sponsor lined up, and there were graphics that was posted. We saw this, I believe, last year with Norm Benning's team, and some really decent hero cards and graphics and stuff set up there that showed Seneca in the 57 before. Oh, we are now at the 90-minute mark, so any minute now, we should be expecting a call from NASCAR inspection. I don't know what to make out of the Mike Seneca thing. It seems that he has an unfortunate trend of trying to run competitive speeds in the circuits that he competes in. Although he seems like he's really good at least getting sponsorship together, because we've seen some of the sponsor logos show up on some of the trucks and ARCA cars that run up before. He appears to have some kind of connections there to kind of get up there, but for whatever reason, I can't explain what happened at Martinsville last year when he was driving for TGL Racing and having that issue where he was so slow during the start of it, and then I guess the officials got irritated at him, where he either was ignoring commands or didn't hear them or something like that. I can't make heads or tails out of that, and I've talked with some people at one person in particular that works with Norm Benning's team, and it sounded like that there was not a lot of information there either about Seneca's role and what his plans are going forward. It's bizarre, but I suppose, I mean, he's still very active on social media, and it seems like he's doing a lot of like short track racing and everything, trying to work his way up the ladder. And I'll give anybody the benefit of the doubt. I mean, again, getting any driver or team out there that can help, and especially since he's aligning himself with maybe some of these smaller teams like Norm's team or Kopp's team, although both those seem to have actually fallen through. Although Seneca did drive for Norm briefly before those original announcements came out, so that was good. I really don't know what to make of it. I really don't. And he's a driver that I haven't had the chance to meet yet. I'm hopeful that by doing some more truck races, that opportunity will present itself, because I think that would be a really interesting interview. And doing that again, looking ahead on the schedule, that is one event we're looking at doing later on this year. Is going to be at Mo Sport in Canada. I think that would be really interesting event to cover, and also want to do some stuff with the Pinty series that weekend too, and kind of do my homework on that and see what a good last car battle in that series looks like. Yeah, I don't really have any other information on Seneca right now, so I'm just going to be. We'll all figure this out together, much like what's going on with the Obica and the New York Racing Team situations. There's always some surprises in there. We're seeing inspection complete, Broken Sandman. Well, okay, let me check here. I do see a post on Pockrass's page here. And inspection complete. Yes, 3 minutes ago, we have a call. Inspection complete, all clear, no issues, says Bob Pockras. Joey Logano is the winner. The top three cars were torn down. Matt DiBenedetto, the 95, and Daniel Suarez in the 41 both have one lug nut not secure, which is a fine. Apparently, no penalties that will drop anybody to the back of the field as of yet. So there it is that we have a call on that. Joey Logano, your winner. Joey Gase, your last place finisher. It will be the feature of the last article tonight. So we'll go ahead and get that going. Thank you all for tuning in. I'm going to go ahead and just leave it here, and we'll get those articles up there for you. Stay tuned to my Twitter at LastCar on Brock for that information. And we'll come back in next week for the Duel in the Desert and see what happens there. And in the meantime, hope you enjoyed the race today, and thank you for tuning in.